Hello, welcome to episode 2 of Beyond the Frets. I am so overwhelmed at the great response and feedback that I've gotten so far with the first episode featuring the great Ben Monder. It was a great pleasure to talk to him, but now we get to continue with more great conversations with your favorite guitarists, educators, and composers, and this time you get to hear from the amazing Barry Greene. He is a jazz guitarist and educator who's been in Jacksonville, Florida the past 25 years teaching at the University of North Florida. They have an amazing program down there. They have people like Danny Gottlieb and Bunky Greene. And Barry really is just a fabulous player and educator and person. He's been a lot of fun to get to know the past couple years. One thing about Barry that I admire a lot, and which we talk about in this conversation, is how he sort of built a really large online jazz guitar community through lessons and videos that people could buy. And he's really been kind of at the forefront of creating a platform for students of jazz guitar to get his materials and learn through courses and different PDFs, videos, all sorts of stuff. There's even a forum that students on the Barry Greene video lessons site can get together and ask questions. And of course, besides that, he's been a university educator for almost 30 years, and of course has his own records and writes music. And he's also got a fabulous YouTube channel that has hours and hours of free jazz guitar lesson content for you. It was a pleasure to talk to Barry a few months back. I met Barry, I think it was 2018. I was on tour with a reggae band, the Andy Shaw Band, a great local musician from Columbus, Ohio. And we were doing these tours of Florida, which was a ton of fun. And my great friend Taylor Roberts, who you will hear from on this podcast pretty soon as well, an amazing 7-string guitarist, solo guitarist, and he does lots of other things, but he's primarily a solo guitarist and is just an absolute wizard. He reached out to me trying to see if we could get a gig going, and it just happened on the one day off on the tour. I was able to kind of rent a car and get out to Jacksonville and do this guitar bonanza at a coffee shop. It was me, Taylor Roberts, and Jake Reichbart, who is, of course, an amazing guitarist and is super well known for his solo guitar playing and all sorts of other stuff. So we had a blast just playing duos and trios at this coffee shop. And Barry Greene ended up coming out, and he brought James Hogan, who is another just killer guitarist. I want to snipe him for this podcast, as well as Jake. So hopefully you'll hear from them in the future. But they came out and hung the whole time, and it was just a pleasure meeting him in real life. And we've since become friends and connected on Facebook and Instagram. So it's been so cool to meet and talk to, really some of my favorite guitarists and legends and some mentors of mine. And honestly, this is why I started the podcast, because I just wanted to selfishly get to hang with these people. And it just turns out that the conversations, I think, are very worthy of sharing and putting out in the world. So some housekeeping before we begin. I want to thank all of you for listening and sharing. Please continue to do so. I know the podcast is available on all platforms now. We're on Apple and Stitcher and Spotify and Google, and everywhere you find podcasts, you will find Beyond the Frets. It's really important that you like and subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes, and give a rating and a review if you can, especially on Apple Podcasts, because it really kind of propels our ability to get in front of new listeners, which is what we want. So tell your friends about Beyond the Frets. Just go to beyondthefrets.com or like us on Instagram at Beyond the Frets. And of course, this podcast would not happen without the support from the Mid-American Center for Contemporary Music. They are an organization that is really on the forefront of helping new composers and educators and musicians in getting their big ideas off the ground. I also want to thank my man Chase Potter, who is helping me edit and mix and make all of these episodes sound even better than I could ever make them, because he is a wizard. And you will hear a great conversation that we recorded for the podcast as well. He's an amazing musician, and you should check out his music. All right, that's all I got. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Barry Greene, where we talk about his tenacity in building a online jazz guitar community, his experiences growing up being mentored by the late, great Vic Joris, his teaching experiences, and just so much more. He's a wealth of information and knowledge, great anecdotes, and just a fun, overwhelmingly positive and warm guy. So you want to know the secrets of the musical multiverse? Sit down, grab an axe, and get abducted. Welcome to Beyond the Frets.
That's fine. It's the ensemble stuff that's really taken the biggest hit.
Yeah, absolutely. What have you been doing with ensembles?
Well, I have a guitar ensemble, so we're doing this remotely. What I have them do is, kind of do a walkthrough of the part, like I'll kind of sing, or maybe even demonstrate how I'm hoping things wanted to be phrased, and they just record their parts.
Yeah.
Right now, like Apple, Ableton, they're all offering like 3-month demos in their software during this COVID. They've all downloaded this high-end software and are getting some recording chops. And again, even though this is not a good thing that we're dealing with, there's been some benefits to it too, because they would never have had the opportunity to do this kind of recording thing, which is so important, I think.
Yeah, it is. And that's something I was not even hip to until this year. I kept thinking, I want to get recording gear and do this stuff, but I was just so busy, gigging and teaching. It didn't come up as a matter of any work or any reason. But then once this hit, I started getting calls to do stuff, and I didn't even have an interface. So, I immediately upgraded my computer. I got all this stuff. So now it's been a great, that's been one good thing about this, that I've had to work on those chops and figure out Logic at least.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, I think it's super important because in these younger guys' lives, who knows? But I've had the opportunity where people will say, hey, could you just record the solo on this one tune that I'm working on? And if you have those chops, it's effortless, to do that kind of thing.
And I think you're someone that obviously knows to be a working musician in 2020, you have to wear about 1,000 different hats.
Yeah.
And one of which is absolutely the whole technology, recording, videos, all of that.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch, like, so many people step up their game, like in such a
totally. Well, I'm sure you're like, you're finally at my level.
Yeah, there's been positives and negatives to that, of course.
Sure.
But it has been great to see that happen, because I guess that's where we're at now. I have a gig on Sunday, which would be the first one since all this started. So,
wow.
Have you been playing much out at all?
Actually, I have. I've played a decent amount. Most of it's been outside, or the band is just like very far removed.
Right.
So it's obviously been a struggle because playing is what I love to do. It's my passion, but I want to stay safe doing it and make sure everyone's cool. But I've been lucky to have a number of gigs. I think I don't have anything on the calendar after mid-October because I live in Ohio. So we don't have the luxury of Florida weather all year.
Yeah. Well, this one is, I'm not concerned, but definitely we'll see how it goes. It's inside, but it's a really, really great setup. Like Ulysses Owens is the drummer who...
killing.
Yeah. So I'm not going to turn that down. But on the other hand, I don't really know what to expect,
Yeah. Well, I want to get back to the technology thing, because one of my questions is, you've been doing these online videos and lessons and books for so long. I kind of want to wonder, what got you into that?
It was 2007. I just put back then we were calling them, well, I guess people still call them podcasts, but there was another name for this back then. I'm forgetting. But anyway, I started a YouTube channel and did this thing on the tritone substitution. I have no idea what made me think of doing such a thing, but I did. And I got such it wasn't a viral video by any stretch, but I got a lot of positive feedback. And people were asking me questions. People were sending me transcriptions
Wow.
of it. One guy brought me to Germany to do workshops just based on this one thing. I
Wow.
had never been to Germany before. And the next thing there I am. And so it dawned on me that, wait a minute, there's potential here for this to be a source of, income. On the same hand, I'm trying to also provide us some great information. But I thought to myself, I might be able to, like, have this be a side thing to my university gig.
Hmm.
That's how it started. That's how it started. But that was 2007, so like 13 years ago.
Wow. Yeah. You're way ahead of the game. Seriously. Well, and was it at that point, were you gigging a lot, or was this something that you like kind of needed to do just like as part of your career, or was it just something you enjoyed?
I think it was a little bit of both. I was gigging a lot. That was a time. I had my children were born, but that time was a tumultuous time. I had just been divorced and was on my own, and
Hmm.
that whole economic hit.
Yeah.
In retrospect, it may have been kind of thinking to myself, I need to figure something out here,
Yeah.
So I was playing a lot, and the second part of that question was it a necessity? In some regards, maybe, but I wasn't. In other words, my intention when I put that video up was not to test the waters. I didn't
Sure.
honestly don't even remember what prompted me to do that. And you had a third part of that, and I've already forgotten what you had asked me, and I apologize. Just as far as your question.
Oh no, it's okay. I mean, I guess going along with that, you kind of created this whole your own platform. How soon did that start? Like in the beginning, were you just doing lessons and getting students, or did you kind of jump onto that platform
No,
model?
I jumped on. I tried to. I didn't know what I would or how to approach it, and there really wasn't the sites that are available now. Like for instance, the Vimeo site that I'm on now did not even exist.
Hmm.
And so what I used to do was kind of like an honor system. I was creating lessons and advertising them on my website, but it was, well, if you want this, you send me this money through PayPal, I'll send you the link. And it was
Wow.
a kind of automated thing, and it was a lot of trust involved. And then I discovered this thing called like this whole idea of a shopping cart that I could put on my website. So now I'm learning how to do that stuff, but anyway, that at least automated the process where I could keep the lessons online. And when people went through the transaction process, it was all automatic. They got a link and it felt much more professional. I started feeling better about it myself, where I knew they were getting the product they wanted without any kind of delay with me getting back to them with emails and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. Absolutely.
But then I found sites like the one I started with is called Viddler, Viddler. I think they're still in business, but they became more of a corporate training video service.
Gotcha.
So I stayed with them for a little while, but that really made me realize the potential of this because that allowed me to have all analytics and all kinds of things that I just
Oh, wow.
didn't. And now with Vimeo, it's been the best situation by far. It's a huge company, as you know, and
Mhm.
everything, all the transactional stuff they do. All I essentially do is upload the lessons and format them on the page in the way that I want them to look. But beyond that, they do everything,
Wow.
including
That's awesome.
it is great. But that was the whole process from being completely clueless to this point here.
That's life in a nutshell, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Just throw yourself in the fire, and I did make plenty of mistakes, man.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, it's true.
Um, I guess going back to zooming out, educating in general, you've been a university educator at UNF for a long time.
Yep.
Can you maybe tell me a little bit about how you got into that position? I know Jack Peterson was there, who was just an absolute stalwart of the jazz guitar, curriculum in the whole world.
Yeah, that's true. I've been there for 25 years, and it's kind of a similar thing, where I was in Tampa Bay at that time,
Mm-hmm.
just playing gigs. And I was this would have been 1993, so I would have been 32 years old, and I was still out there playing gigs. And I don't know, I just I just got tired of the thought, or I got worried about the thought of me doing this 30 years later, carrying an amplifier into a club, making $100.
Totally.
And I thought, I don't know if I was necessarily thinking about having children, but I thought about some sense of stability, being able to have a wife and life insurance and those kind of health insurance. I mean, those kind of things. So it prompted me to reach out to USF, University of South Florida, and get my master's degree. I had my bachelor's.
Oh, gotcha.
And because I had been there long enough and playing for a long time, they were really good to me. I didn't even have to audition. They said, you're in and you're now the guitar teacher while the 2 years you're getting your degree.
Nice.
So I got a full ride, and it was just a really super pleasurable experience. And just fortunately, the job at UNF was available this summer that I graduated.
Oh, wow.
So interviewed for that. And one thing I do want to say, because I get this question a lot from people, which is to say, to prepare yourself for something like this. And I don't think this is going to be in every situation like I'm describing, but just trying to be the best guitar, in our case, the best guitar player that you can be. I'm a huge admirer of your playing, by the way.
Oh, gosh, thank you.
You're welcome. But that whole idea of just being excellent at something has gotten me with the video lessons, and also got me the job, because I had no university teaching experience other than being a teaching assistant during this time I'm telling you about. And I know now, because Kevin Bales, who was the head of that search committee, would tell me later that, the guy I was with or competing with had a doctorate and was much more of an academic, but they weren't looking for a musician at that point, so the whole thing about just being very serious about your craft paid off for me, because that's life changing, man. And I hope you get the same opportunity. It changes everything, because all of a sudden you do have the thing that musicians just don't generally have, which is stability.
Yeah, that's been something I've dwelled on for so long. And actually, I just started my master's. I took a 5-year break. I was gigging full time and teaching, but I had the same thought. I was like, I don't know if I can do this forever. It's just financially, there's just no way. Like the bass professor up here, he always makes a joke. It's going to be the 40th anniversary of the $100 gig.
That's true.
Oh, man, it's like so dark.
It's true.
Yeah. And I absolutely love teaching. So it's not like I'm just doing it for, a gig. But that prompted me to get my master's now, and I'm super grateful for the experience. I have an assistantship, full ride at the same time. I'm teaching a ton.
Right. So you have the same experience. So I hope you have the same good fortune and get a gig as soon as you're done.
I hope so. It's interesting. I wonder if it seems a lot harder right now for someone like in my position or my age, because a lot of cats are going all the way through the doctorate, and they are like crazy good players. And, the people that have the jobs tend to keep it until they croak. So it's definitely interesting. And unfortunately, we've seen a lot of places, they'll can the full-time position and then just adjunct it out. So it's like those full-time 10-year jobs sometimes aren't even being, replaced.
Right. Yeah, the last part you discussed it has not been an issue at the University of North Florida. They've been very loyal to their positions, but we both know that all the places, for instance, in New York is a perfect example of all those great names you see on the roster to be your guitar teacher. None of those guys are full time. Oh, and those guys even visit the campus. They come to my house.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, totally.
But the thing you're talking about with whether it's going to be more difficult for you, I don't know. I think there are more programs now, but I don't know, because I don't have my ear to the ground anymore about looking for what positions are open necessarily. But I'm not getting the feeling that there's any kind of sense of desperation out there, that things are dire. I think what you're doing right now is probably the best that you can do for your as a musician for your life, man. Because that's like once you've got that, at least now you can get through the door.
Yeah,
I can tell you very, very quickly, and this is benefiting you. We should just say that I used to chair that committee, the hiring committee, for about 15 years at least.
Oh, wow.
So what we would do, especially well with the jazz,
For just all the music?
yeah, for everybody.
Okay.
But when it was the classical stuff, of course, I would have committee members who were strong in that area to say, "Hey, help me out," basically. But the jazz ones, what we would do is we would ask for CDs, of course, and we just go through all the recordings, which is just to say that's the mentality at UNF, is we want really high-level players.
Yeah.
We could whittle it down to 8 or 9 people, and then it became what you're talking about. We would look at resumes. So what it means, is it more if somebody had a doctorate versus a master's? Potentially. But we wouldn't knock somebody out for that reason. We wouldn't, but it did make a difference. Somebody who went to Indiana or Berkeley or North Texas State versus a school that we had not heard of. Yeah, those things made a difference. But the initial thing was, how are they playing? And the real thing was, and for you, this is going to be cake, was the phone interview. Just how does this person communicate? Do you get a feeling of that you can be, camaraderie with this person that you're going to be working with, like you said, until you die, essentially.
Yeah, seriously, you're stuck.
Yeah, and it's true. We've got like such generally good faculty, like Danny Gottlieb, for instance. Probably, I always think he's probably one of the nicest people on earth. So it's really good. And like I said, I'm hopeful for the same for you.
Thank you. Yeah, I am very excited to get out there after school and find something. But I was looking at the faculty list at your school. It's super heavy, man.
Yeah,
must be
just really good players. Yeah, it is. It is. It's intimidating at times, but yeah, it's great. It's great.
That's awesome. Well, so you said at that point you're in your 30s and you were gigging. Had you just been a gigging musician up until that time?
Yep.
Okay.
That's all I was doing, and I was fine with it. I really was.
Sure.
I had the conversation with I was going to say my son, but it actually was another student. I was okay with that. I think that's fine when you're younger. Like you're talking about that joke. If you don't have intense responsibility or deep responsibilities as far as mortgages and all these kind of things, it's fine. I loved it, man, because I had my days free to shed, and that's all I used to do, and then play gigs at night. It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get to a point, I think it's a natural thing. You get to a point, you start thinking about the future, where are you going to be when I think it was the older age stuff, like where I am now. I just turned 59, and this is the part I was worried about, where, do I want to be this age?
Well, man, you don't look it.
Well, that's really kind of you. Thanks. Smoke and mirrors, man.
Yeah, Photoshop or whatever.
I think
programs for that.
Yeah, the Zoom has a slider on it, or maybe it's Skype. I forget. Improve your appearance.
No, Zoom has that. Yeah, totally. It's like, all right.
I still don't look like Brad Pitt, man. But anyway, yeah. And it was fine. Like I said, you start thinking about just your life and where you want to be at a certain time. Some people can be, hey, I'm cool. I don't mind doing this. For me, I really wanted much more, and I wanted to travel and enjoy life. And that, unfortunately, money is part of that. Having a little bit of cash. But I have 2 children now, two boys that are both 18. They have health insurance, and I've got life insurance. All these things that were just unimaginable to me.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is. Thanks.
Going backwards still, who were some mentors for you when you were coming up, especially gigging?
Oh man, so most of that was happening when I was still living in Jersey.
Okay.
I grew up in North Bergen, New Jersey, which is right over the George Washington Bridge, so we can get to Manhattan honestly in 15 minutes. And back in the 70s and 80s, you can actually really do that, because it wasn't this huge amount of people, basically. Just jump over the bridge or go with the tunnel and be in New York in a minute. But as far as like the guitar players in particular, I would have to say Vic Juris, who lived not too far from me. Without a doubt, probably the most important person, versus what I'm talking about recordings, like Pat Martino and Benson and Wes and all those guys. But as far as, somebody that I would routinely communicate with was Vic. I used to go out here and hear him. You might never know this, but Chuck Loeb, who also we just lost really recently, was a monster, like straight ahead jazz guitar player too. And I used to hear them at these small little clubs, just Vic and Chuck playing together. And they would always, at the end of the night, they would say, "Hey, Barry, come on up, play a tune." And I was just a kid,
Wow.
but they would always give me that opportunity. And so, yeah, I really owe Vic a lot. One of the most important things, I think, in that regard is that he would just call me up and say, "Hey, why don't you just come on over later? We'll play some tunes."
Hmm.
And I'd frantically start just warming up.
Sure.
And I get to his house, and you could just tell he's just wiping the sleep out of his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And he would just take out. Back then, the Ovation guitars were a big deal. I don't know why that was.
Totally.
And rub this thing called Fast Fret on it. I don't know if I've ever even seen it again. It was like this.
I know that. Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, you put that on, and wow. And we never talked about money, but it certainly felt like a lesson.
Sure.
And he was showing me stuff that he was working on with Pat Martino. He was driving to Philly to take lessons with Pat Martino.
Wow.
And all the handwritten stuff of his, which is some that I still have. And it was just great. So although I have tons of guitar heroes on recordings, Vic by far musically was the most important person in my life.
Yeah, there's something, there's so much listening you can do that's helpful, but to have someone, in the flesh that's willing to just open up and just give you anything you need
in
that open way.
Yeah, and a lot of it too wasn't even necessarily like communicated, like use the Dorian mode here, kind of stuff like that. It was just playing tunes and recognizing, especially when you hear yourself, and we all have experienced this when you have to follow somebody who just completely just wasted you as far as musically. You recognize where all of your weaknesses are and what you need to work on, much more than you in the safety of your bedroom.
Sure.
And the gigs were the same thing, being on gigs with people that were so much better, where you feel like, sweat pouring down your forehead because you knew you were just outmatched here, but you learned so much. And I know that's advice that many people have given, Pat Metheny in particular, saying always play with people that are better than you. But It's solid, important advice.
Yeah. I mean, if you're the best person on the stage, that's not a good position to be in.
No, especially in the early part of your life when you're really trying to learn.
Totally. So were you in high school at that time?
No, I had finished. I'd gone 2 years at Berkeley. I took 1 year off because I had gotten a really, really good gig. I did that. And then I came back and was at William Patterson College.
Oh, wow.
This is the 82 to 84.
Okay.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Mid-20s.
Pardon me?
So like early mid-20s.
Yeah, early 20s for sure. That's exactly when that was going on. The time, hanging out with Vic and then just jumping into New York every single night sometimes. Because you could, back then it cost only, I think it was like $3 or $4. Now it's like $15, I think, to cross into the city. It's just insane. But there were clubs, like the one place in particular called Bradley's.
Oh, I've heard many stories. Yeah.
You said we can walk in that place. I walked in there so many times with people like, Kenny Barron, all these monster musicians. I remember one time, I'll never forget it. I think all you had to do was buy a drink. I think that's the only thing you had to do. Sit at the bar but there was no cover.
Tough break.
You walk in, and I'll never forget it because as soon as you walk in, there's the piano. I remember, seeing Rufus Reed and all this, but I'll never forget this because of the way it was set up. You'd walk in, the bar is here and the band is here, and then you had to make a sharp right turn to head down to where the bathrooms were. So you couldn't really see who might have been. And I turned that corner, and there's Tony Bennett just sitting in the corner, like drawing. It's like it was such a great place to grow up. You're around all that, but. Yeah, places like that. Chris 55 bar was the same kind of a thing. I think it just required you buying a drink or two. So I used to go hear Stern all the time with a Walkman in my jacket, like recording all of it.
Wow.
So, it was the best. So it was an environment for sure, full of inspiration. I saw Joe Pass play solo guitar several times at the Village Vanguard. It was just amazing. It was great. It was great. So. Yeah, I'm just saying it was much easier than it is now. The city it's tough. It's really, really tough.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have family back there still?
Yeah, I have lots of aunts and uncles and cousins. They all still live up in Jersey and New York. My dad moved down to Florida several years. He lives in Tampa now.
Okay.
My mother passed away years ago, but my extended family is all up in Jersey, New York.
Gotcha. Well, what brought you to Florida?
It's so lame. It's just you said the weather essentially. I mean, it got very depressing up there in New York, and also
Sure.
even though I'm telling you all these great stories, most of the my living was being made playing like weddings and bar mitzvahs on the weekend,
Mm-hmm.
and that was great too. Uh, there in that part of the country, it was done through these agencies, these club date agencies they were called, and they had a roster of musicians. They were just ranked. Like Vic was number one. I was
Yeah.
right beneath him. So when Vic couldn't do things, I'd show up. And these are weddings and bar mitzvahs, and you think it's so silly, but the musicians were monsters, all of them. And there were some guys with ears, like any kid, like on this bar mitzvah can come up and ask for any tune. In 2 seconds, we were playing it, just figuring it out on the spot. The other thing too I know I'm off on a tangent, but I do want to point this out. The band leader that I used to work with, all he would do is, I know you've heard of this, maybe you've experienced it. We'll just put up like your fingers, for whatever reason, with flat keys. And we would just start vamping on a 1-6-2-5. He wouldn't turn around and say, hey, do you guys know Take the H Train? He would just start playing tune after tune after tune.
Yep.
And the ones
I had that.
The ones I didn't know, a piano player was usually on the gig. I was learning them on the spot. And that's when I think to myself, what it helped me as far as getting good relative pitch and be able to hear chord progressions.
Mm-hmm.
That it was playing bar mitzvahs, which is crazy.
Wow.
But it's true.
You just had to do it.
You had to do it.
On the spot.
Right. It was funny too, is when I got older and started leading my own bands, I remember thinking, I don't know the melodies to any of these songs. I just know the chord progression. It's like every standard tune ever written,
Right.
I remember having to just start learning those. It was funny, but I realized, oh my God, I've been an accompanist for so long. I don't know how to play any melody. So, but anyway, I forgot what your original question was, but
Florida.
Oh yeah. I got tired of that. That's what I'm trying to say. And I just didn't have a future there. And I was playing great gigs in New York with people like Dave Kokoski, all kinds of musicians, monster musicians. Yeah, Dave and I used to do a Sunday brunch every Sunday.
Wow.
I'll tell you a really quick story about him. And I'll get back on tangent about Florida. Wow. But that was one of those things where I walked out of there thinking, oh my God, am I ever going to be able to even come close to hanging with these kind of guys?
Yeah.
But this is how far back it was. One guy came in and requested "We Are the World." I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about, right? The song "We Are the World" with Stevie Wonder and everybody on it.
Mm-hmm.
Live Aid, I think.
Live Aid, yeah.
And of course, back then, young 20s, I had my eyes rolled up into my head, thinking, "Oh, brother, this guy. How could you hear us play and, ask for such a silly tune?"
Right.
And it was Dave Kokoski. Not only did he start playing it, he's singing it. He sounded like Stevie Wonder, man. He sang the whole thing. I had tears in my eyes at the bar, just completely blown away. So I have a lot of good memories of that stuff, but I wanted better for myself. So I decided to leave. And I thought, I could be a big fish in a small pond. That was my mentality.
Mm-hmm.
I just came down here and met people and started gigging right away. And it was probably the most fun I've had in my life. That's for sure. Wow. I did that for 10 years. And then we would pick up on the story I told you where I called USF.
So you were in Jacksonville or where?
No, it was in the Tampa Bay area.
Okay, that's right. Gotcha.
USF is University of South Florida. They're in Tampa.
Okay.
I'd spent just 10 years hanging out, practicing still like a madman during the day. Gigs, same routine, gigs at night. Except this was a whole different environment. This was not New Jersey. This is Clearwater Beach and beautiful girls all over the place. I was into being very physically fit, and it was fun.
It sounds great.
Yeah. And then the story picks up at being 30 plus and thinking I need to do better.
Yeah, totally.
So I'm glad I made that move, man. I really am. That move to Florida. Sometimes I would have regrets occasionally, man. Playing with these monsters and being friends with so many great musicians. So sometimes I think back, I wonder what would have happened if I didn't. But here I am.
Here you are. It's fine.
Yeah, right. Just fine.
Okay, just wanted to take a quick interlude from this fantastic conversation because I want you to hear Barry. Here is the track Resurgence, which is a composition he wrote. and it is the title of the album as well. This was released a couple years ago and features the great Jamison Ross on drums, and it's super, super killing. Barry is just sounding monstrous on this, and the compositions are beautiful. So I wanted you to check out this track and get a little bit of Barry's playing in your ears. Well, I want to switch gears. I read on your website that you love country music.
Yeah, did I say it? Yeah. I love it.
Something you don't know about me.
Right. Yeah. And I appreciate you doing the deep research on me. But
Yeah, sure.
I'm really, it's not that I do like it. I know who the main country artists are. I'm not going out of my way to listen to country music. What I'm saying is that I have an open ear for everything that's, musical. I'm sure, I'd imagine you feel the same way.
Oh, totally. No, I brought it because I love country. I love like Hank Williams, Merle Haggard, George Jones, Willie. Mm-hmm. I love all that stuff.
That's the real country music, though. Right? Compared to like more pop country that's out.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Did you agree with me? Like the guys you're mentioning are more of the old school.
Oh, totally. Absolutely. Yeah. No, the pop stuff nowadays it's great too.
Yeah, I think so.
And all the guitar playing is just super bad.
I was just going to say that it is really killing. I love that whole thing, like that Jerry Reed, that the what do you call it, the Travis type picking.
Yep.
All that stuff, it just amazes me. And but anyway, excuse me. All I was trying to say during that is I'm not being facetious about it. Just to say that I think that a lot of people think that just jazz musicians are curled up with their Charlie Parker records, and that's the end of it. But I love soul music, R&B, funk. I love all of it. I used to be into heavy metal as a kid in the 70s. Would you even consider Aerosmith heavy metal? I don't even know. Maybe not.
I'd say hard rock at best.
Yeah, you're right.
Back then, yeah.
You're right. Because back then, like Judas Priest was out. I liked it, but not as much as more of like we were just mentioned a moment ago, like Aerosmith and Zeppelin and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But just to say that you got to be open up to everything, because all this is going to come out in your music in some way. And I really personally feel, especially listening to the, R&B singers, like people like Brian McKnight, who I mentioned on that same webpage, and anybody in that vein, gives you kind of almost a sultry melodic approach to playing jazz. You can hear it all over Benson's playing.
Oh, yeah.
They even hear it in a sense when Train is playing really melodic. You can hear what I consider like almost that kind of a vibe, that where people would think of as just being soulful, versus real mechanical. And
absolutely.
So that's just all I was trying to say. Because I think for whatever reason people make fun of country music. So I put that out there. It's like, I do like it. So leave me alone.
Yeah.
Don't be a jerk.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of people, especially like students going through school, they think they have to only listen to jazz.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I got a hole up with my Parker records, like you said. But I always tell anyone, if you like something, just like double down on it. Like, don't be afraid to like anything, because if you resonate with something that can inspire you, explicitly or implicitly, like you said, maybe you like take a modern country tune and like arrange it for a trio, or you just like the way it sounds.
Right.
There's so many ways you can take influence from music, and I mean that's what Parker was doing. He was listening to Stravinsky, and they were so open to everything,
Yep.
and that's just what it is.
It is. I agree with you 100%. But I think what you also mentioned, I agree with too. And I think it's just a part of just being young. When you're super young and you're very close-minded and think that the only thing that you should be dealing with is jazz. I mean, I went through it myself for sure, which is why I was telling you the Dave Kokoski story.
Mm-hmm.
It's a perfect example of that. Like, not even entertain the fact that not only should we play it, but he's going to sing it. And it's probably the biggest tip we ever, that part I don't know for sure. It's probably the biggest tip we got of the day.
Yeah, right.
So,
yeah. Well, and it's tough especially when learning jazz. I mean, it is such a heavy style. I mean, you really do have to do just thousands upon thousands of hours of listening. So it is hard to tell someone, set that aside just a little bit.
Right. Yeah. But like you said too, when something resonates with you, I don't think that you have the choice, to say whether it is or not. And these guys who are growing up at a time, music, I don't know, not to sound like the old guy, but so much of it is computer generated, and it's lost a lot of the elements that were so important, like great melodies. Even just going back a couple of decades, people like, Stevie Wonder, the types of music or harmony that he was dealing with as a pop musician.
Oh, totally.
Versus what we have today. That part's kind of a drag. I'm hopeful that some of that comes back.
I will say, I totally agree. I mean, there's just been like a total lack of half the time people don't even sing. Like, there's just no melody. But there are a lot of pop lately I've heard has some killing chord progressions. I feel like there's this resurgence of like these like gospel trained musicians, and especially like all the major pop artists, their touring bands are like, they are absolutely insane, like either jazz people or gospel, and they do a lot of reharms and stuff. But like someone like Ariana Grande, for instance, a lot of her tunes are like super killing harmonically. Like my girlfriend was listening to it. I was like, dang, what is this? She was like, Ariana Grande. I was like, wow, this is kind of hip.
Yeah, I need to check that out, because I have been kind of disappointed by that. And what you're describing doesn't surprise me, and I like that you mentioned about the, musicians that kind of grew up in the church without much background other than the fact that they just were exposed to all this. And there's being here in the South now, there's a lot of guys like that. There's one, there's not even Ulysses, but there's another drummer in town by the name of John Lumpkin.
Okay.
He was one of the students at UNF many, many, many years ago. He had the best ears in the class. I had all the saxophone players. There were some guys who were smoking. But whenever we were doing kind of ear training stuff for improv and I'd be at the piano, I'd always have to say, John, don't answer. And even on gigs, like I'll be here, ready to play. And John, what do you want? He'll be leading them. So let's just do this tune. He starts singing the melody. And if it's not the exact friggin' pitch of the starting note,
wow,
it's just astounding. And that's because of what we're talking about here. Just growing up in the church, just being around that whole thing. I also was listening to Brian McKnight recording a live thing that I hadn't heard before. And you could hear the instrumentation, obviously. And then this guitar player came out of nowhere. Like, what? Who is that? It was Isaiah Sharkey.
Wow.
This beautiful guitar player. I was like, wow, exactly. So then I look him up and, checked his records out on Apple Music, whatever. But yeah, I agree with you 100%. There's great, great music out there. But I think I have to check out the Ariana Grande thing you mentioned. But I think there's been a glut lately,
Yeah. I mean, overall, it is certainly 2020 pop, but the harmony and it's pretty hip, I will say.
Yeah.
And I do feel like the more stuff I find has been kind of going into that direction. Thankfully, harmony is sweet.
It's needed. Without a doubt. It's not frustrating. It's just such a sign of the times. But doing some of these technology classes, like some of them are just purely audio production classes where it's not about the software anymore. It's about, how to mix and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But because I do a lot of viewing of YouTube videos just to keep myself sharp, you see these advertisements constantly about this one piece of software called Captain Chords, where it's just generating chord progressions for you.
Oh,
Captain Melody. You've seen this?
I've seen
and the advertisers like, you didn't have to know anything about music at all. I mean, that's the statement. And it's mind blowing. And there's another guy that does this thing with just melodies. Hey, you need a simple melody? I gotcha. And he's playing just this thing on and he's selling these little MIDI packs of just melodies.
Yep.
It's horrible. I can't. It really upsets me because learning music theory and being able to play your own melody is actually really kind of nice.
Yeah, exactly. To me, that's like, if you have like predictive text or whatever. Do you have an iPhone?
Yeah.
Like when you type and there's like the options.
Yeah.
It's like if you just press the second option for like a whole sentence, it's like it's correct words, but it doesn't make any sense. It's just like, let's do this chord, this chord, this chord. I don't know. It's there.
Right. But the thing is, what ends up happening is that these guys will generate 4 or 8 measures, and that's the whole thing. That's right. The whole tune. They'll throw some rap lyrics on it or just sing a simple phrase and mute parts, bring them back in. That's the arrangement, but it's still around those same 8 measures, when there used to be real songwriters, and that's what I miss. But I might be out of the loop because you're setting me straight here. But even in my car, I have Sirius XM in my car, and I try to listen to everything, man.
Yeah,
I got to find a station that's more pop oriented because I'm not hearing Ariana Grande on the stations I have for.
Well, that is a good point, though. I mean, the true songwriters. I mean, it doesn't really exist right now. People like Jimmy Webb.
Right. But like you were saying, like those Nashville guys churning out like just pop hit after pop and really well constructed tunes. Maybe that's some of the like of the country music too. It's always a great message and it's always well thought out and structurally. It's great. The performances are ridiculously incredible, man. So, yeah, I do. Anyway, I know we talked about it a lot. I think that it'll find its way back eventually. And honestly, I think one guy who might help all of us, that Jacob Collier, out in England, he's just so brilliant. It's so inspiring. Talk about harmony,
Yeah, I mean, I was just talking to the drummer that's like the same that just started his masters along with me. He was saying how Jacob Collier was like the first person that really helped him like figure out harmony. And a lot of people that I talk to that get into him, they're like, he's like this gateway drug to just learning like deep, dense harmony, but in, an approachable and really cool way.
I agree with you, man. I think it's one of the best things to happen to music in a long time, man. I really, really do. And like you just said, he's such a genuine guy. It seems to be egoless, and the way he delivers it in such good humor and good spirit and kindness. It's just, I find it pretty overwhelming. I mean, I put myself out there just to say that, I watched lately, of course, I've been watching a lot of Eddie Van Halen videos and finding myself having tears streaming down my face. But Jacob Collier does that to me routinely. When I listen to his music, it's amazing. It really hits me at a very emotional level. So, I think, but like you're saying, it's introduced people to a whole world of harmony. And then to see these guys, like, I don't know if you've seen this person, his name is June Lee. Asian guy.
That transcribes all this stuff, right?
Yeah. And to watch 2 guys at that kind of level, I don't know if you've seen the video where they're kind of talking to each other, but music.
Yeah.
Scales and intervals and dead on, when you go to your own piano, I'm like, holy, it's just.
It's wild.
It is.
It's wild.
It is.
He just put out a video. I haven't watched the whole thing. It was like 2 days ago where he plays Danny Boy in like 18 different emotions, like gaining in complexity, like on the spot.
Right.
And then he analyzes it after. It's just like,
I've seen that too. I haven't watched it yet like you, but I definitely want to. Yeah. Yeah. It's great the way he gives out that knowledge like that too. And those melodic session breakdowns that he does of his own music are just, what I'm talking about?
Yeah, totally.
It's, having all that stacked harmony voicing, and then the way he's able to just, change pitch microtonally just so it
Yeah.
fits the harmonic series more naturally than just a tempered instrument. It's
He's this way above. I can't even tune my guitar half the time.
I know.
Like, man, wait up.
That's
well,
true.
So, back to tying this into educating, how do you approach your students when, you have to learn this, have this deep command of jazz, but also there's all this stuff going on. It's 2020. There's so much music. How do you kind of wrangle and reconcile, the jazz education with, keeping them abreast of all the things that they should be aware of?
I think, the guys that come to us, to UNF, truly are already in love with the music. We're really, really fortunate. We have a very strong program and we turn away a lot of people, meaning that we're not in, dire straits trying to find students. So the ones that we have, like I have right now, 6 guitar players in my studio, and they're all playing great.
That's awesome.
So
not surprised.
Pardon me?
Not surprised.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, but it does make that part of it easier because these guys are like hungry like wolves. You know what I mean? Just want more and more information. And even with the Zoom thing, we've been able to make that function. What we lose, of course, is the playing with each other part.
Yeah.
Which is a killer. There's no doubt about it. But we've all grown so accustomed to it that they're fine now. I can sense it, that they're good. Hey, Barry, I was wanting to talk about comping today. And so I would say, well, what tune would be a good vehicle for us to work on? And once we've got those parameters in place, it becomes the hour goes by in a minute, Yeah. So that part's easy. And I think just because they're a product of the time that we live in, they're so inundated with the internet and all the music and stuff that's out there, I don't think there's necessarily an issue with them being aware of what's happening musically and all other aspects of music. So I think the only thing is just like we were talking about earlier, is trying to make them realize that everything is meaningful in some way or another. That whether these artists are putting out simpler, music, they have their heart in it just as much as you do when you're playing giant steps or whatever. So, in other words, it's good this stuff going to be learned from everything. And I do make the point of when they ask me about time feel, especially, which is as you know, such a difficult thing to teach somebody.
Yeah.
And I'm saying I'm expressing the music based on what I've heard in my life. And a lot of it happens to be, groove-oriented music, whether it's jazz, funk, blues, it's all in there. And you can't just be stuck listening to Miles. You can't.
Sure.
And he'd be the first person to say, if he was here right now, that's the case.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, and I think I guess what I'm trying to say to answer your question is I think a lot of it is taking care of itself pretty automatically. Thankfully, because we have a great group of students, but also the fact that even me as a teacher, practicing what I preach, I love, and I've turned them on to music all the time. Have you guys heard this? And we were talking about Eddie Van Halen so much this week, and I think some of them were surprised, like why would Barry even be? Because it was one of those moments again. I got tears in my eyes because
totally.
I was in high school. I was a junior when that guy came along. And he changed the entire planet, man. And so,
he's totally the reason why I started guitar.
Oh, that's great.
Between him and like Metallica, it was like, I distinctly remember the first time my dad showed me Eruption. I thought it was a keyboard.
Right.
And then we told me guitar. I was like, what?
Yeah, I know.
And I'd been playing piano up until that point. I was like, all right, give me a guitar.
It's
time.
It's true. And the things that he had, this ties into what you're talking about. Besides the fact that he was such an amazing technician and came up with all these new ways of playing the guitar. When you just heard him play like rhythm parts, man, that guy had a pocket like nobody else.
Seriously, yeah, especially in that trio format. I mean, you put on Fair Warning and just like the nastiest stuff. Man, it's so bad, so bad.
I know, and that's an issue that a lot of the younger guys have. They, for whatever reason, have overlooked that they're missing like just that deep connection to the feel of the music in here,
Yeah.
That's in your fingers, man. I mean that. So, yeah. So, I'll shut up.
No, I was just going to, that's something that what I have done and what I tell my students, when transcribing, it's like, all right, getting the notes is cool. That's all fine, but you should really like match, like, how does Grant Greene's eighth note feel versus Ed Bickert's? Try and match the actual feel exactly, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's it.
The most important part. It's like, okay, yeah, you can get the notes and like analyze it, but what does it feel like to play along with these cats?
Yeah, I mean, that's the answer right there. And any of the guys that we love, that's how most of them learn that way themselves, just by playing along the recordings. But as I said, I think you'll agree, it's the most challenging thing to teach. It's so easy to deliver theoretical stuff and chord voicings and fingerings, all that kind of stuff. It's super easy. But man, to teach somebody how to be a musician, super, super hard. But that's what I tell them. I do exactly what you said. Go play along with the Grant Green. Transcribe those solos, man. Play along with him every single day.
Yeah.
Until that stuff was rubbed off on you completely,
Yeah, exactly. And I think the longer you do it, I mean, this is from my experience, the longer I play music and dive into this, I kind of gravitate towards the type of players that I connect with as far as time feel. I'm like, okay, I really like this guy. I really like this guy. So I want to like dive into how they approach time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I feel exactly the same way. I also feel that, even for the non-musician, that and the sound of your instrument is what they're responding to the most. They don't know anything about, melodic minor or whatever. It's just, that's the way, time feel, I think, is just transcends all of it, no matter whether or not people are musicians or not. So if you overlook that, you're overlooking one of the most important things. And like I said, unfortunately, a lot of students come in with that as like an issue. Some of them don't. Then the rest of the gig is so easy. It's just filling their head with information,
Yeah.
But if they already got a pocket and can throw down, I have a former student who's a great guitar player. His name is James Hogan. But since we started Oh, you know James?
Yeah. Well, I know of him. Yeah. Well, actually, I think he came along to that gig.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. Actually, I want to snipe him for the podcast.
You should.
I want to talk to him.
Yeah, you should. He's a great guitar player, and talk about his anything has really thrown him for a loop. Because, but in any case, what I was getting at is that since we started this tech program, all of a sudden we have these guitar players that are not jazz musicians. They just came here for the tech degree. And James is teaching all those guys.
Totally.
And we're talking about it. Like, these guys have come in at a point where they never heard Paul Jackson Jr. like play funk parts like on an 80s pop record, or Prince, or the way even on rock guitars like Jimmy Page, all the guys who played just amazing rhythms, all those tunes. And they've missed all of it. So you ask them during an audition, hey, just play us a funk groove. And they didn't even know. We might as well be speaking in a completely different language, But for us, that's what we grew up on. And it's so embedded in our playing. And I think that's part of it too, where they come in very just lacking in that department.
Yeah, that's honestly like, I went to school, and then after I was playing, and have since been playing with a lot of like funk and R&B groups and wedding bands, all that stuff. And that was some of the hardest music I've ever learned, just like sitting down and playing Sex Machine for like 5 minutes. That one little part, like that stuff is so bad, and it's so hard to do for like that extended amount of time. And it's like mind boggling. There's two notes, but you got to make it sound amazing the whole time.
I agree with you. I had so much respect for those guys, especially that some of them, those little notes you're talking about became like the main feature of the tune itself. That little fun part, like that Nile Rodgers part on some of those tunes from back in the 70s. I'm trying to think of one of those tunes right now. Prince, Paul Jackson, like we already mentioned. And like you said, you're part of a whole machine. It's not that whole open thing like jazz, and you're trying all these different colors and communicating with the soloists and stuff.
Yeah.
That's all the thing, man. I remember I went on a little brief tour with a guy named Doug Cameron. This is a smooth jazz violin player.
Wow.
But it was just a little Florida tour we did. And I remember, getting all the music, of course, and listening to the tracks that were already, put out, and learning it all. But we get on the gigs, I would feel like, okay, let's play, and I had plenty of solos, but even during the rhythm parts, I wanted to start stretching a little bit.
Sure.
And I got the keyboard player who was his like road manager or tour manager,
Yeah.
whatever, musical director, whatever you want
Yeah.
to call it, got on me. I mean, in a way that I deserved. Hey, look, you need to stick to one part because whatever you're playing, I'm trying to play something else.
Sure.
So, and then we're together and we're good. But every time you change it up, and I'll never forget it. And I love those kind of moments, those teaching moments for myself out there on the, in the field, so to speak, because it stuck with me forever. Yeah, that's what that was.
Yeah. Yeah. Those experiences you have on the gigs. That was actually one of the things I wrote down. I said jazz education in school versus on the gig. Because it's we obviously have talked about it, but yeah, it's so great to be in school and have those resources available, and you have your peers and you have your mentors and your teachers and you have all this proliferation of information. But if you're not out there doing it and getting your butt handed to you, you can't really do anything.
That's true. It's true. I mean, this is something we talk about a lot. And as best as I can, I try to create those situations for them.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, like with the guitar ensemble, we'll probably spend 50% actually working on guitar ensemble music. And the rest of it is what we're talking about now, like working on ear training, playing tunes in different meters. Or I'll just go to the piano and play a chord. And of course, I'll ask them if they can recognize it.
Sure.
Some of them are good enough where they can actually tell me the actual chord itself, like the root, they have perfect pitch. But for the others, they start play, because I want you to react to what you're hearing right now. And as quickly as you can, tell me what this chord is based on. Is that a sharp 9 or whatever it may be, and just developing those skills. Or to say, okay, let's play Have You Met Miss Jones? Throwing out a fictional name here. Derek, 8-bar intro. 1, 2, and put them on the spot. Because that's what it was like, those moments I was telling you about.
Totally.
That's what it was like. And that's when you realize, okay, I know what I need to do when I get home tonight. And I got to work on my intros,
Yeah, exactly.
You'd never figure that out on your own, sitting in your room. You're too busy worried about that D7 flat 9 chord, you know what I mean?
Right. It is difficult, at least from what I see, just because the lack of opportunities playing jazz all the time. Like people at a certain age had the luxury of being able to play 6-7 nights a week in lounges, in hotels, at clubs. Now it's like if you're playing a jazz gig, it's once in a blue moon, or like you're the band leader and it's like all your own stuff or whatever. There's just less opportunity to have that kind of mentorship where you're like getting hired by, older cats and just playing tunes and getting your butt kicked. At least that's just what I've seen and experienced.
And you're better to judge that because I'm one of those old cats now. So I don't. You're right, and it was a great. Those experiences were great. But even as I told you, I felt myself getting my ass kicked more sometimes on these weddings and bar mitzvahs.
Totally.
It's just so all the environments are worthy of learning. And I can tell you, like, just
True.
Not since I've been here, I've only done a couple of those club date gigs because it started bumming me out. Based on what I was telling you before, I'd work with guys that would have a real book. They'd play a tune, people would be out there dancing, and they'd stop, and they're fanning through the real book pages. I found myself having an anxiety attack. You know what I mean? Like,
oh man,
do you want to continue to dance? Not in these 2-minute spurts. So, but I did one with some faculty. This is a long time ago, but there's a guy named Bill Prince. He's still here in Jacksonville, who's a monster, but had one of those guys that was gifted with the most incredible ears, and plays every wind instrument. None of this is exaggerated.
Yeah.
He plays them all great.
Yeah.
He was with, I think he was with not Woody Herman's band. I'm trying to remember, but it doesn't matter. We're on a gig, and it's me and Bill, and the piano player was taking a solo, and Bill's just, I forget what the tune was, but Bill just started doing things like, ooh, do, 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 that little background figure. It gives me like the nod, like, oh, okay, I'm supposed to do this with you. So,
right.
And we did. And, so they began, but I think he was trying to bust my chops because it was, and they would just develop it to the point where it was almost like a full on melody.
Right.
And I had that experience, like, sweat. I don't know, because I knew who I was dealing with. He's got extraordinary ears. I start making mistakes, and I'm first of all, I'm already a professor. I'm getting my ass kicked at a wedding in Jacksonville.
Right.
So like you're saying, even any situation like that with somebody who's been playing longer and just has more shit together, than you do is always a good thing.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, it is important to take any experience and try to find something good out of it. I talked to Ben Monder last week for this podcast, and we talked about the same thing. He played weddings and bar mitzvahs for decades, for a whole long time, and he said that he took them as positive experiences when he could. Mm-hmm. And I talked about like the litmus test that I've been told about taking a gig. It's like it has to hit 2 out of these 3 things. It's got to be some good bread, or it's got to be really fun, or it does something good for your career. If it's like not 2 out of those, then maybe you should reconsider. Unless you're like starving.
Yeah, I was gonna say circumstances. I tell the younger guys, just take everything that comes their way. I always make the joke: if you get a call for a country gig, throw your cowboy hat on and walk out. Go out the door, man. Just
absolutely.
Let's go.
Yeah, I've done like 2 or 3 reggae tours of Florida with a band.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been all over Florida with a reggae band. So it's like you just never know, and that was a great time.
Because that's kind of what we were talking about before. Isn't that a very specific part that you have to play to keep the groove?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. That stuff kicked my butt.
Right. Right.
I will not pretend to be a reggae player, but I did it. Right. Oh, I did pretend, but I will not pretend to be a real one.
The placement of the stuff is in unusual places, basically, right? Rhythmically.
Yeah, exactly. Totally.
Yeah. Honestly, all the things we're talking about, like you said, even though you have your list of 3 things, even the bad gigs becomes at least story worthy that you can tell your students.
Absolutely.
So yeah. I really, it was the attitude. I'll just take everything that comes my way,
Yeah. Well, I guess, that little test that was after taking everything. You have to say yes to so many things until you figure out, okay, I'm not going to do this type of thing ever again.
Right.
You have to find what you will do for your own sanity.
Right. But like Ben was saying, you can make the best even out of the worst situations, even if it just becomes, like I said, something that you'll be able to tell your friends later.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, man, I really appreciate you doing this. It's been a pleasure. I was really looking forward to this. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I really appreciate you talking to me, and I definitely hope I get to see you in person after, all this.
Yeah, I feel the same, Zach. And like we were saying to you earlier, when you guys visited Jacksonville, I heard you, of course, before online when you were putting a lot of stuff out on Facebook and things like that. But I was really, really blown away, particularly with your chord melody arrangement stuff was great, man. Just really.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So when you contacted me with this, I know that you'll probably edit this stuff out, but when you contacted me about this and kind of said, "Hey, this is Zach. I don't know if you know me," I was just laughing to myself. Of course I know. Of course I know who you are. So yeah, it's an absolute pleasure seeing you too, man. I hope we do get to play one of these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad you're doing well, and I'm glad you're still teaching and doing your thing. Are you, have you been writing at all?
Yeah, I have been writing a lot. I write a lot for the guitar ensemble, but I've got that other side of me, like I've told you before, so I've got a lot of contemporary jazz tunes right now that I'm in the process of just kind of finalizing. Everything's pretty much composed.
Yeah.
I'm also waiting on, a guitar. About 20 years ago, I had a Buscarino. You know who John Buscarino is, the guitar maker?
Totally.
So I have a Strat that he made for me. I'm trying. And it must have been bad times, but I ended up selling it to a student.
Oh wow!
And James Hogan alerted me yesterday. He goes, "Barry, just a heads up. This particular student's got your Strat on sale. Just letting you know." And I contacted the student right away, so I'm buying it back.
No way! That is cool.
And this one I'm going to put all the funk parts on with the Strat.
That's so
yeah. Yeah.
And I listened to Resurgence this week on my job. I commute to Columbus. I'm like 2 hours away for school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Killing, man. Oh my gosh, it's such a great record.
Thanks, Zach. You know how it is when you hear your own stuff. You know, I can't listen to it anymore. I like a lot of the songs, but when I hear my soloing, I think, Barry, But I'm really happy with all the compositions, and those musicians were killing. I forget the drummer. He's just like exploded right after that too. I'm forgetting his name there, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's Jameson Ross.
Right, Jameson.
Yeah, he plays with like snarky and like all sorts of stuff.
He took off like immediately right after that. So yeah, on a side note, he was so instrumental in just helping that whole project go, and it had great ideas. Like, Barry, why don't you cut this part in half, shorten this, move that over there? Like, yeah, you're right.
That's awesome.
And it was great. It was great.
Man, that's super bad. Cool, man. Well, I definitely look forward to future recordings and seeing that Strat. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. You'll see it. All right, Zach. Best wishes to you too. Congratulations on the degree, man.
Appreciate it,
and I wish you just the same success. Well, even better than I've had. So I'll talk to you soon. And thanks again for letting me do this.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. Thanks so much, Barry.
Take care.
Okay, folks. This concludes episode 2 of Beyond the Frets. Just want to thank Barry Greene again for taking the time with me and having such a wonderful sense of positivity and candor and honesty and just so many great words of advice. So I will see you all in 2 weeks. The next episode will drop on February 1st with the extraordinary Cecil Alexander. We had a great conversation, and I'm really looking forward to getting that out for you all. But until then, please share this podcast with your friends and listen back to the first episode if you haven't already. And I will see you next time.